Everybody,
Welcome everyone
to this, the latest in
We'll
our
get
Best of Breed
started
webinar
shortly.
series that's been running this week. Today, as Robbie says there, we're going to be focusing on Ivanti, specifically Ivanti Neurons for ITSM and ITAM solution. So with me today is Julian Wigman, who's probably a veteran of 20 odd years of working with the Ivanti solutions. So a good person to be able to present on there. But before we get started, just for those of you not familiar with MarXtar, myself, just a quick sort of picture as to who we are. We've been around for a good period of time now, so founded back in 2008. But we got experience for, again, the last 20 odd years of working with Ivanti, and prior to Ivanti, the likes of Landesk and Heat Software, to name just a couple of the organizations that came together. So I'm Mark McGinn. I'm the founder of MarXtar, and I'm a consultant myself, but primarily in the endpoint management and security areas. Now, as MarXtar, we focus around the successful implementation, ongoing use of the solutions, and hence the best of breed
All right,
approach.
I'd like
that
to
we've
welcome
been
everyone to
referencing.
today's Best of Breed
Understanding
webinar series. Today
the
we
needs of an
are spotlighting
organization and mapping
Ivanti.
the appropriate
During the
technology
course
to
of our
that.
webinar,
So
if you
not
have any
every single
questions,
piece of
feel free to
technology
type them
that's
in the
out there,
chat window
but a key
and
portfolio of
we
what we
will
term
answer
as
them
best of
in
breed
the Q&A
vendors that
session
have
at the end of
particular
the
ways
webinar.
of addressing
And with
those
that, I'm going to
requirements.
hand it over to Mark McGinn to get us started. Have
So
at it, Mark.
we work with lots of different organizations over the years, so we're not going to go into these, but just to show lots of different verticals and lots of different size organizations, SMB up to multinational organizations. So lots of experience to bring to play. So why Ivanti? Why is Ivanti one of our particular best of breed vendors? Now, without trying to steal the thunder of Julian when he goes into his actual presentation, Ivanti has been a leader for the last 3 years with the analysts, so Gartner and Forrester especially within there. We're talking an enterprise class solution, but without necessarily the associated price tag that you might see from, not to name them, some of the other vendors out there in the leaders quadrant. So when we're talking enterprise, we're talking IT service management, which is a given, IT asset management, but also enterprise service management, so non-IT functions. The solution itself, as you'll see, highly configurable, but also one of the things we'll look from Ivanti is it's a broad portfolio. So we're not just looking specifically within the ITSM space, but also across the board. So just a few things that mean that we have selected Ivanti as one of our best of breed options. So at that point, what I'll do is I'll hand over to Julian, who can actually introduce the solution to you. Over to you, Julian.
Thanks, Mark. So welcome everybody. As Mark says, we've been involved with ITSM for a long time. I've been working with ITSM products for the last 20 years. I head up the global ITXM practice. So when we say ITXM, we really mean IT service management, asset management, and automation. I head that up for MarXtar organization. So today I'm going to be standing in for Ivanti in terms of demonstrating the product and really looking at what can Ivanti do for us for MarXtar? What makes it that best of breed product? So I'm going to talk about capabilities, the overall architecture, some of those sort of um, general things about the product. We're then going to look at the product from an end user and from an analyst perspective. We're going to circle back and we're going to summarize what we've learned so far, and then we'll open the floor for any sort of general Q&A that come in at the end of it. Okay, so first of all, I want to sort of introduce Ivanti. Where does Ivanti fit? What is Ivanti? Where does Neurons for ITSM fit into the overall portfolio of the Ivanti product set? So we've got a very busy chart coming up here, really to try and demonstrate where Ivanti fits in. And what we're going to be doing today really is looking at these first two pillars across the Ivanti pillars of excellence effectively. So we're looking at IT service management, we're looking at the IT asset management space. Now, underneath all of this, we've got the wider, what we call the Neurons platform, which brings in things like connectors into discovery applications to go and discover asset information. And we take feeds from that sort of information up into the ITSM and asset management space. So as you can see, Ivanti have quite a wide portfolio of products and capabilities. From a how does that fit, the sort of deployment perspective, then we have this overall sort of Neurons platform in the middle, which is a cloud application or cloud subscription. And on top of that, we have cloud applications, but also on-premise applications, because Ivanti is covering both aspects there. So between the capabilities and the different ways of deploying in your organization, Ivanti have this wide set, and as Mark alluded to, it's one of the strengths we see as the MarXtar organization. But let's dive a bit deeper. So one of the things that is important to us, from the very start is that the product has some industry recognition. We see it a lot in tender scenarios where customers want us and want the Ivanti products to be well known out there. So being on the analyst radar, being on the certifications radars are things that are important to us. Ivanti, as you probably know, are one of the market leaders up in the Magic Quadrant for Gartner. And it's quite an empty space up in that top right hand corner. There's another 2 or 3 vendors in there, but generally most of the vendors tend to be either bottom left or top left of the system. So in terms of having Gartner visibility, that's very important to us, but also some of the certifications. So Ivanti is certified by Pink Verify in 11 ITIL 4 practices, and it's also certified by Surview for sort of more European-centric view of the certification in 14 practices. So we get this tick in the box. It's important to you as customers, putting RFPs out to vendors like ourselves, but it's important to us because we want that tick in the box. We want to be able to, not have to worry about, have we got that sort of recognition out there? So that's one important factor for MarXtar. The second is the Ivanti Neurons for ITSM is a mature workspace. So it's come out of the Heat stable. So it was part of the Heat platform of old. Ivanti acquired Heat and rebranded to Ivanti a while back. But it's also brought into the mix technologies from other ITSM platforms that Ivanti have acquired. So the Landesk, Touchpaper, Service Desk product of old, and also more recently in the last year or so, the Cherwell platform. All of those ITSM platforms are coming together, and we're taking the best of all and overlaying them onto this Neurons for ITSM platform. So it's important to us that, again, we've got maturity there in the solution that we're providing. As you can see from this very diagram, unlike some other vendors as well, Ivanti have both on-prem and cloud versions of the ITSM product. So it doesn't matter whether you want to start in the on-prem and move into the cloud later, you have those capabilities. So customers that have high secure data requirements, or they haven't quite got the number of analyst seats to warrant moving to the cloud to make it cost competitive. There are various reasons why you might want to choose on-prem over the cloud offerings. But Ivanti have what we call a cloud first approach. So cloud versions will always come out probably 2 to 3 months before the equivalent version on-prem comes out. Okay, so it's important to us as well that we have that ability to not only do cloud, but also be able to offer on-prem if the need arises. And just moving beyond that, if I just hide the screen now and just stop the presentation. One of the things that we also see as a big benefit for Ivanti is that irrespective of whatever licensing tier you have for the product, you get 3 environments out of the box with Ivanti at no extra cost. So of course, you're going to get your production tenant, as we would call it, whether you're cloud or on-prem, but you're also going to get 2 non-production tenants. So you're going to get a staging platform, which is a development platform. You're also going to get a UAT platform. And that becomes very important to us as a partner, because it allows us to work more effectively with you as a customer when it comes to upsizing and up versioning and up maturing the solutions within your organization. Because it's often easy to forget that, when you're putting in a new solution, once you've gone live with that solution, what happens then? How do you move and mature your systems? How do you move that next function out of the development stage into the production stage without causing any sort of major disruption? Now, a lot of our competitors will charge, or Avanti's competitors will charge extra for that. Some will only give you 1 platform. Ivanti are giving those 3, and we see that very important. If I just stop sharing my screen, and the way Ivanti deliver that is through what they call the operations console. So if you're a cloud customer with Ivanti, you'll never see this. It's handled by their cloud operations team. But because this is an on-prem version, I can show you what's going on here. And you'll see we've got a number of tenants already configured in the system. So we have our staging, which is our development platform. We have a UAT platform, and we have a production platform. And what we can do through the operations console, this is not a feature of the actual runtime product. This is management of the architecture and the solution itself, is we can control how we move design between those environments. So, if we're live with a production system, what we can do is we can push a copy of the whole database back. Well, in fact, we can actually choose what we want to push back. And the great part here, if you're developing within the organization, is you don't have to involve your DBAs to do this. You, as the developers, and if you have the rights to this console, you can push a snapshot of your live system back into a staging environment to maybe plan your next development sprint. So you can work in here is 1 developer, multiple developers. We have scenarios where customers may be working on some items. Maybe we as an external partner are working on items. We can work together in that same space at the same time. And when we're happy that we've developed a new feature or a new solution we want to move for testing, we can apply that as a package, as we call it, into our UAT environment. You as the customer can then test that without affecting the live system. And then when we're happy, we can push those same packages into the production environment. So, we hear of other solutions where, maybe you get 1 environment, so you've got development, but then your users are testing in the same environment as you're trying to develop, or maybe even you're pushing new changes directly into your production system. And from a partner perspective, we don't like that. We like to be able to have control, de-risk it, allow you to test it, allow you to move things in when you're ready to move things. So we find this is a very important and very undervalued secret. Normally, this doesn't even come up in tenders, for example, and it's quite an important thing to us moving forward, helping you mature the system. But what is this thing called a package? The way I can show you that is really to switch into the analyst view of the world. And if I just switch to the analyst portal and go into, if I just switch here, actually, you can see this little spanner up here. If you have the role, then it'll take you into this screen here, which is basically where you come to configure the system. And down the bottom here, you'll see development projects, development packages. So if you're, say, a developer wanting to build a new feature, maybe you want to change the screen design or add some new list views in or things like that, then what we can do is we can create these things called packages. And you can just create them as a named entity. And once you've created them as a named entity, here's some examples, for example, that I've created. They appear up in this top right corner where it's under project. So you'll see I have a drop-down list here where I can go and pick a project. So if I want to build a new functionality over the top of what we've already got in the production system, remembering I've taken a copy of live back into development, staging as we call it, I can go and select a project here. And once I've selected that project, any changes I make to the system as myself as a developer will be captured into that project. So I can do anything I want. I can go and create a dashboard, screen, new role, configure email, whatever, and it's going to be captured as transactions into that project. So we tend to, as a best practice, we tend to use that for features. So I want to add a new feature. Let's create a project for that. Wrap all the changes into that as a feature, as a package, and then we can combine packages into a release, which we call a project, a pack. Sorry, we can capture projects and incorporate those into a package, which would be like a development sprint. And we can move that whole package into the UAT environment. And that's a great way for us to move design around the system. Yeah, so one developer
Julian,
can work
sorry,
on each
sorry
their
to
own
interrupt, but I don't think we're
packages,
seeing a
or
screen
you can
change
have
at the
the same
moment.
two developers or more working on the same package, and it'll combine all of their work into one easy movable
No, we're
piece of
not
work.
seeing
Now, some other
self-service, I'm afraid.
products, you can move types of assets,
Maybe
you
you
can
need
move
to,
all your dashboards or all
yeah,
your queries
reread.
or all your
Yeah.
design. This is very much feature-based moving a technology. And we find that, again, a very important, underrated part of Ivanti that, we know about because it makes our life a lot easier, but it also makes your life a lot easier as a customer. Okay, so
That looks good.
what I'm going to now do is switch in to show you the wider demo. What I'm going to show you is the Ivanti out-of-the-box solution. It's probably 98% out of the box, 2% changed just for the demo purposes. I'd like to start by looking at it from an end user perspective first, and then we'll switch back to this role that we're looking at here, which is the analyst view of the world and how analysts can be productive within the system. I'm not going to have time for a full demo today. It's a very cut down session, but we'll dive straight in. So if I switch to a user that is an end user, we have different ways of authenticating the system. We can come back to that later if we need to. This is the out of the box experience in terms of an end user. It's role driven. So when I log in to the system or when I go to single sign on, it knows who I am. Not seeing a screen change. I'm seeing self-service on the preview here. You can't see service catalog. Okay, let me stop sharing the share again. Maybe it doesn't like switching from PowerPoint. Okay, let's do that again then. I wondered why everyone was quiet. How's that? Okay, yeah, switching out of PowerPoint mode to demo mode probably affected it. Okay, so what I've done here is I've logged in via single sign-on into the self-service experience. And it's role driven, so it knows the role that user is in, or the user can have more than one role. If they have more than one role, we can actually see it in this drop-down list top right here. I'm only in one role in this particular case, so I see this single pane of glass landing page. Now, if we look later on beyond pure IT use of the system to enterprise service management use of the system, then we have a number of choices. We can either have a single pane of glass like we have today, and have IT and facilities, HR, all in one place for their end user, or we can create discrete portals if we need to do that. So if your HR department want to have a discrete identity, so you want to go to the HR portal or the IT portal, we can actually create different dashboards for those different ESM roles. So when you log in, you're going to see a dashboard here that's facility centric or HR centric. Now, in terms of the look and feel of this, everything's configurable on this screen. Say this is out of the box content. So we tend to talk in terms here of the omni-channel experience. So, we want users to be able to interact with the service desk in the maximum number of ways. So whether it's using the self-service experience, whether it's sending an email into the service desk and the service desk automatically creating an incident on the back of that email, those are two ways that obviously an analyst walk up. Those are ways that which users can interact with the system. This is what we call a responsive UI. So the same UI is going to work for you if you're accessing the system from a mobile scenario. So here on my iPhone, for example, We have apps for Android and iOS, or you can even run it up in a browser. And again, it knows who I am, so it knows that, you know, if I go into the knowledge base here, it knows, you know, what I'm allowed to do, and you know, it's adapted for the size of the screen that I'm running. Now, if I'm an end user, I'm going to see the end user experience as I've got on the screen today. If I just show you, if I fire up in a browser, you know, you're going to see an analyst experience, and you can drill into that analyst experience, and you can manage the finer details when it actually comes up. You can manage the finer details of the particular incident. It's probably timed me out, the browser. But so again, role driven. It knows who you are. There we go. It knows what we can do, and you can say, if you're roving around on the campus or whatever, you can update, add, augment your service desk tickets and requests through that mobile experience as well. When we branch later off into asset management, mobile devices become very useful for things like scanning barcodes, doing audits, doing goods in receipts. Those areas are important parts of what that omni-channel experience brings to the party. Now, if we go back to the self-service world, yeah, we're trying to do the shift left, the how can we empower the end users to be able to solve and self-serve themselves. So the general sort of browsing through the knowledge base is one way of doing it. You know, we can obviously search and type in real time up in the top here. So if I want, I've got a, you know, maybe I've got a VPN issue, it's going to go and search my system, you know, across things like my known error database, any announcements that I've got in the system. You'll see the announcements, by the way, ticking across at the top, which you can drill into. You can color code them, you can do things like that. Look at opening the service catalog and requesting, you know, in this case, be logging an incident against the VPN issue. Or I can maybe, let's look at a knowledge article. Maybe I want to,
I think it's frozen for everybody. It's frozen for me. So
look at remote access. So I'm a working from home user and I want some information on working from home. So what do I need to know about working from home as an Ivanti employee? And so we can go and open up the knowledge base. We can look at a knowledge article. Knowledge articles are rich. So, you know, you can have, you can see here, you could see here, let's try that again, remote. Got a bit of a screen delay going on. So articles are rich. So, you know, video links, hyperlinks to other articles, attachments that are knowledge indexed. All of these things are part of, you know, empowering the user to be able to self-resolve their own incidents. So you can see here, I've got a, when it finishes refreshing, I've got a video link out to YouTube or your video server. I've got the ability to have related documents. I've got the ability to rate articles for service improvement, things like that. Yeah, so being able to browse the knowledge base independently, you know, is a great feature for self-service. You also see these little hearts appear from time to time. This allows you to flag knowledge articles, service catalog items as it's frozen again, I believe. Can you see the screen okay? How about that? Is it still frozen? In the preview, I can see it looking okay. I'm sat on the home page. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's refreshing.
Okay. Yeah, there's a bit of a speed issue here when we put the sharing on. Then I guess. So knowledge is one way of providing information out to the end user. If I go into the service catalog, if you can just tell me if that's refreshing, okay.
Yes, it's in service catalog, just loading.
Let me turn my camera off, because last time I turned my camera off, that helped, didn't it? Let's just see if it's my camera. There we go. So in terms of interacting with the service desk, in terms of any new transaction, then we use the service catalog for that. So whether it's an incident, a problem, an HR case, or, you know, a facilities request, all of those things we can either show as a single service catalog for your end users, or we can, as I said earlier, separate those out into different portals if we want, if that makes sense to do that. We have the capability in the service catalog to be able to flag items as popular, so they appear at the top. So they're regular things, so maybe consumable requests, things that your particular role might ask for a lot. We could put those at the top of the screen to make it easier to get to. And you'll see these little favorites again. Favorites allow me to flag items that I want to appear at the top of any searches that I do. If I'm ordering a toner cartridge on a regular basis, make that appear at the top of my search. Now, if I go back and let's go back to a VPN issue we were looking about earlier. If I go and type in my service catalog here, it's going to return some hits for me. If I go in and open in this particular case, it would be an incident template. Then what we're doing here through even a templated incident is starting to bring the knowledge into focus again. So we start to search as an end user perspective our knowledge system. So these can be objects that we set up. So out of the box, we search the knowledge base, we search for any FAQs, but we can extend this model to search for other things across the business. So the ability for an end user to read a knowledge article, go back to that rich text, they can see videos here, and they can use buttons within the article to resolve it. So if I said resolve it and save, it would actually log an incident, but automatically resolve it. And if I go and look at that in what we call my items, which is that third tile on the screen, then we can see that it created that incident and it closed it automatically. But we've linked that knowledge article to the incident. We've got recognition that we can later report on that was useful for me. So users can access incidents. They can use knowledge to help them search. Let's look at more of a request side of things. So I want a new tablet, for example. So I go and search for a tablet across my knowledge base. If I go into a tablet request, here for request management, we're putting the right form in front of the user for the right thing being requested. We're improving the quality of the information we've got coming in. So in this case, if I'm Louisa and I'm requesting a tablet for myself, and I can fill in the mandatory fields I need to fill in. I can pick optional items that have been designed on this form. These forms are dynamic, so if you can show and hide things on the forms as you need to do that. So you can see that storage capacity is mandatory. It's got a little red star against it. We capture pricing information that is passed to, in the case of this particular item, an approver to actually go and approve. We can show delivery times estimates from the SLA, but we can also show real-time averages from transactions of the same type that are already ongoing within our service desk. So we can see, what we expect it to be, but what it is currently on average as well. So we've got those sort of things going on in the system. Now, the idea of a request is we're capturing the right amount of information. And I could save it for later, but I'm not going to do that. So if it was a long-running incident, for example, a long-running request, I could save it for later, something like a new starter where you've got to keep coming back to it to fill in more information as you gather more information about it. If I look behind this particular request, you'll see it's gone straight to a pending approval state. Now that's workflow behind this request that has created that. We'll look in a minute at how easy it is to create these items in the catalog when you want to do that. Now this has gone to a manager for approval. If I just switch over to that manager's machine and go to their My Items, then what we're going to see is their ability to see approvals come up. Now they can approve via email as well. So they can reply to an email and it will approve it in the system, or they can go in and they can have that richer text experience in terms of, looking at it from within the self-service portal. So look at what the user's requested and either approve or reject. So importantly, we've got workflow behind things that we've got in the catalog. Each item in that catalog can have a different workflow behind it that matches what we need to do. I've got comments coming in, we've got MarXtar, so we do have a bit of a slowdown when we've got screen sharing on, unfortunately. So let's look at some other examples. So maybe new employee. There we go. The wonders of live demos. So we may look at a new starter process within the system. And the new starter process in the system is going to have a different form, different mandatory fields. But going back to the concept that we've got dynamic form structures, we can make things mandatory if they're checked. we can build forms that are representative of what we need to capture for this particular item. We can also bring into play areas from other parts of our service management tool as well. So for example, if I go and search for catalog maybe, or even product catalog, I think. Here's an example where we're requesting consumables or requesting computers, but what we're going to do here is look at real-time inventory, look at what we call our product catalog within the system. So this is part of the asset management portfolio, and we can look at, maybe I want to order 5 toner cartridges, or maybe I want to, order 5 laptops. We're looking here at our what we call product catalog image of what things that potentially users could order. So instead of having an individual tile for each of these types, or a boring drop-down list, we can actually present our product catalog out to the user estate. And what we could do here is only promote items that have stock holding. So we could filter this down so that users can say, well, you've got 2 choices of laptop you can pick. So we can do some great things within the Ivanti portfolio in terms of creating that great self-service experience. So if I go back to the final part I want to cover on the self-service side, is really another differentiator for Ivanti is it includes basic chat out of the box. So if I open a chat session, this is a chat session, a basic manual chat session with an analyst. You'll see at the moment chat is unavailable. If I switch back to my analyst view and I change to a role in my system, you'll see I've got lots of roles in the system. Change back to a role in the system, which is the service desk analyst. You'll see that I've linked in chat capability to this particular role. So as I change roles within the service management analyst portal, it's going to change what I see within the environment, what dashboards I see, what top level menu I see, what I've got access to within the system. But more importantly, it's also showing this chat button here. So if I'm an analyst that needs to get on, get my head down and work on, I can carry on without being part of the chat pool. Or if I go off and make myself part of that chat pool, you can see I immediately now get an incoming coming in from, in this case, Max, to say they want to start chatting with us. So I can say hi or whatever. And if I switch back to Max, which is this one, wasn't it? You can see we're starting to have real-time conversation with the user. Now the user can take things like screenshots. So if I got a screenshot here, let's find me a screenshot. I can drag that across and I can drop that. I can copy that. I can either upload here or I can paste it into the chat here. So I can paste it in and it'll upload that screenshot up into the cloud. Well, this is the link in that particular case. I copied the wrong thing, didn't I? That's the link from earlier, I think. It's not letting me copy when I've got sharing on, which is interesting. But I can go and attach something from my desktop or whatever to actually, at least, to be able to bring more information to the analyst. If the analyst goes and looks at that from their perspective, they've got the ability to create an incident from that transcript. They can go off and understand more about that user by viewing their user's profile, and they can continue to have that sort of chat with the user. Now, Ivanti, again, is quite unusual that chat is included out of the box, at least this sort of standard chat you're looking at now. If we want to go beyond that to AI type chat, then one of the tiles that you may have seen earlier on the opening slide was what we call Neurons Digital Assistant, which is a AI-based chat that you can also access within the self-service portal. Now that would be an extra cost item, but we do start with basic chat out of the box. Okay, so what I want to do is, let me just cancel that chat and then let's switch to looking at this from an analyst perspective. So I mentioned changing roles changes the way that you're interacting with the system. And really, service manager from an analyst perspective, or the service manager as a whole, or the Ivanti Neurons for ITSM as a whole, is a toolkit. We're looking at out of the box capability in terms of the ITIL practices, but generally the look and feel, what you can do in each of those ITIL workspaces is really the same, with a few minor exceptions. So, we can build dashboards, we can build forms, we can build list views, we can do all of those things across the ITIL workspaces. And what we're looking at here is out-of-the-box examples. As an analyst, as I change my role, you'll see this menu change. Again, we can brand it, color scheme it. This is all out of the box in terms of look and feel. As this particular role, you'll see I've got access to things that I don't necessarily fit on the main menu. So we're looking to fit the things that are the common things being asked for in this particular role. If I change my role, let's change back to an administrator, and then we can see lots of roles in the system. So now my top level menu is going to change, my dashboards are going to change, the access I have within each of the ITIL workspaces is going to change as well to reflect that. So a lot of the things we see around the power of the Ivanti platform is the ability for analysts to get to things quickly, to do things quickly, to use the system in the way that they want to use the system. Yeah, so, if we look at dashboards here, pie charts, bar charts, list views, pivot tables, drillable items are things that we can do. And it's very easy to go and look at, and build a new one yourself. So maybe I want to go and look here, edit that dashboard, go and change it, then publish out to my peers. These things are easy to do. Anywhere where we see a list view within the system, we haven't got one on there, but let's look at maybe this one. You can filter, sort, select. So anywhere where you see these list views, you've got context-specific filtering. Yeah, so it's these are things you learn from using the product. You can blow things up, make them bigger. If we dive into the incident workspace, look at what we can do within the incident management system, for example. We can look at incidents in a different way. So this layout here, as we call it, is driven by the role that I'm in. The fields that I see on this are driven by the role. Again, I can group, filter, sort by those items, all usability things. I can change the view of this data. Maybe I only want to see all open VIP incidents. I can highlight one or more items and I can perform actions on them, either from my toolbar here or from this actions panel. We call them quick actions here. So maybe I want to send an email to all of them, warning them that I'm chasing them for something. So things that we set up here, email templates, can go off and notify those users. Workspaces can hold what we call filter bars. So this is the out-of-the-box filter bar for incident. So even if you don't know how to write a query, for example, and again, you can write your own queries here, new safe search, write your own query. But if you don't know how to, if you're not adept at doing that, then we can present a filter bar. So let's bring back all incidents in the system, for example. If I only want to see all priority 2 incidents that are in my team or logged this week, we can filter down just to show those items. And once we're happy with that, we can save that as our own safe search. So again, usability things, making it easier for the users to use the system. If I go back to my list here, if I just hide that panel there, we've got the ability to create incidents from templates. So I can open this as a VPN connection issue. So here's me opening the same incident that I opened as an end user, but this time opening it as an analyst. And here you're seeing we're looking at more within the system than the end user saw. So we're looking at, our known error database. We're looking at knowledge base on a wider basis. We're looking at ongoing problems. And again, we can use this information to help us resolve. I could say link this to the incident, or maybe I could use a knowledge article here to actually go and resolve that incident for me, and it'll fill in the resolution information and other things that I want to see. Yeah, so from an incident perspective, the look and feel of these, whether you're working on incidents, problems, changes, it's the same sort of concept. These are the out-of-the-box screen designs. Part of the engagement with you is to augment these, to add new fields to them, drag and drop fields on to make them better for you. Yeah, so we can using knowledge here very much to help you resolve things. Concept of major incidents, the concept of surveys at the end of incidents and requests, getting that feedback, presenting it to the analysts, are all things that are things that we do in a wider demo to you. Linkage to other areas in the system. So if I was to just save that away quickly. As soon as we save away, service levels start running, all those sort of usual things you would expect within the tool set. Yeah, so we start to see our response targets, coming into play. I've triaged that, so it's now gone. It's now satisfied that. But we can create maybe a problem from an incident. So we've got full linkage in an easy way between all the different workspaces within the system. And we're going to take this workflow through its life cycle, either through changing the status, or we can change it through escalations, or we can change it through workflow as well. If we touch on service requests, for example, then what we're going to see is the concept. And again, this is a differentiated with Ivanti. I haven't seen it in all products, but certainly Ivanti does this. If a user picks up the phone and calls the analyst, rather than use self-service, which we'd want them to do, as soon as you pick the user, then what it's going to do is it's going to present to you as the analyst the published set of catalog items that user is allowed to request. So there's no ringing up the service desk and requesting things that you're not allowed to request purely because you're talking to an analyst. So you get that same experience. If I do a new employee setup, I see the form. So again, even as an analyst, I'm improving the quality of the data I'm getting into the system. If we look at change management, again, same sort of forms, the same sort of look and feel, the same sort of ways of operating the change within the change workspace. Again, you've got templated changes, your normal changes, your standard changes, all of those sort of things, or standard changes. If we open an example here, just to show you, because I'm conscious of time, then is there anything different within the change workspace that we draw out as being an important part? Well, there's a couple of things. One is a risk assessment. So for example, we can create a set of questions, answers, and weightings. So as you come and risk score your change, then it takes that overall risk score. So in this case here, we've also got linkage in with security incident. So if I save my change off here with a medium or above risk score, what it actually did is automatically create me a security incident, because we might want to involve the security team in this high risk incident, this high risk change. So we can use this risk analysis, for example, as an advisory, or we could actually use it to drive the priority of the change if we wanted to do that as well. Now, this pre setup change has got a server link to it. It's got one or more services linked to it. We can see the change represented against the outage and availability windows that we have across all of those services and assets. So, we're looking here, we're planning our change at a time when there are no lockout windows. So again, helping me to plan that change is a great feature in the Ivanti product set. Of course, we can go off and look in the change calendar. We can go and see those changes color-coded out of the box by the different types of changes. So an emergency change is going to be a different color maybe to a normal change in the system. We can filter that calendar down. So by safe searches, again, same way as you could filter your incident list or your problem list, we can filter that down as well by the by searches effectively. I only want to see all changes at scheduled status. We can filter that list down. So you can see the wood for the trees in a very busy change calendar. If I switch to configuration management and look at our configuration management space, we really don't differentiate data-wise between whether it's a CI or whether it's an asset in the system. If you're an asset manager, you're going to drive it from cradle to grave. If you're a configuration manager, you're going to be in service, out of service type of capability. If we look at a typical server within the system, for example, let me just go and find an asset in the system. Here's what it looks like from a configuration item perspective. It's just when it opens up. There we go. There we go. So here is an asset within my service management system. And you see we have two tabs here. These first two tabs, details, discovery. This is at the managed state of the asset. This is things that we maintain manually, or we can actually maintain them through our product catalog again. So when if we're creating a new item, we select the item from the product catalog, it automatically fills all this other information in for me. The governance information of this asset type, where it is, who owns it, what its depreciation is. These sort of things we're seeing on other tabs that we're appearing for this particular item. Now, from a configuration management perspective, we're also interested in what do we know about that from a discovered state? Now, if you're using endpoint tools like Ivanti's endpoint tools or the Neurons platform, which has discovery, or you're using SCCM or Snow or any sort of discovery tool out there, we can feed that information into the ITSM world as well. And then compare the difference between managed and discovered state. You know, we think it's in this location, the IP subnet thinks it's in a different location. Yeah, so we can do that that analysis of, you know, discrepancy analysis. We can look at any instance problems, changes, releases. There are lockout windows. We can maintain relationships between our upstream and downstream relations, whether they're services, whether they're other assets. We can import this in from, you know, if we go with Ivanti's discovery platform, you can import this automatically in from discovery tools as well. But what this does is enables us to visualize the importance of this asset within our services workspace. So we can see this server underpins these technical services that underpin this business service. And this is the business service you saw when we logged an incident, the thing that we actually fill in against the incident. I can see how many incidents, problems, changes I've got active against that particular device. I let it like on there. I can look for, you know, how does that device being down affect any upstream services, or maybe that service there that's widely affected. Maybe how does you know, what other servers comprise to actually make that important to me? I can see that service is underpinned by 4 servers. So again, you know, we're using that from a configuration management perspective. Switch over to an asset management perspective, and we see this information from a greater aspect. We're seeing it from a cradle to grave aspect. So the ability to be able to build out and maintain our product catalog, all our normal standard catalog items that we want to put out there to the business, be able to handle stock more efficiently, be able to manage vendor management, be able to do vendor scorecarding, disposal management, even purchase, invoice and shipment tracking within the system, or importing it in from external, you know, vendors where you're doing that. All part of the bigger picture of the asset management system. The ability to be able to, from purchase order stage, have visibility of that asset in your asset register. Yeah. So this is the wider asset management portfolio would give us within the system. And finally, what I want to just do is to just switch back to configuration management and just show you one other aspect where we see a great feature of Ivanti here, and that is the ability to automate within the system. So if I just minimize this down to a slightly smaller size. One of the key questions I always get asked is, can we create an incident from an event coming into the system? You know, can we have a SolarWinds down or an Agios down state, do something, you know, and notify and alert within our system? So if I go back to my my configuration item again. Oops, I've looked at it from a configuration manager's perspective this time. See a different dashboard. And I'm going to go and pick that same item again, just for see. So generally, when we're looking at this, we're looking at event management. So how can, through the Ivanti APIs, the REST APIs, SOAP API, web APIs that Ivanti provide as standard, how can our external tools interact with our service management solution? So if I simulate a down state coming in from, say, a network management tool, so I'm firing a PowerShell script that will just simulate a down state through the API. And what we can choose to do here is to actually show that as an event coming into the system. So you'll see here, what we've now done is open an event against this CI. So we're starting to track availability management here. So we can see things like outages and things like that within the system. But if I drill into that, you'll see what we've done hopefully what we've done behind the scenes. Just refresh that again. What that outage will actually do as well is it's a bit quick, I think, is create an incident automatically within the system as well. So we're using standard automation within the system. If I go to that incident, you can see that I've created, through that down state of the asset, an incident. I've attached the CI to it. I've gone and allocated it to the right team to work on it. But we're maintaining that visibility from all directions. Now, if that device goes up again. You could obviously resolve it manually within the system and do it that way, or if you go and fix the device generally in the rack, then what that's going to do, if I just refresh it here, is it automatically resolves that incident. If I go back to my CI and just refresh that again, you'll see that what's done, it's closed that, and it's worked out that it was an overall downtime of 1 minute duration outage. They roll up into your out of the box exception reports, so we can see availability management as part of that as well. So hopefully you're getting the idea that Ivanti has got a very capable out of the box scenario. So, you know, things like problem management, things like project management, release management, and then the enterprise spaces that I'm sort of alluding to here, HR workspace, security operations workspace, facilities workspace. These are all things that are on top that you can build into. Okay, so that's probably what I'm going to show you for today. What I'm just going to do now is switch back to the starting presentation and just move on to summarize really what we've covered today. If I can find the slide button to press it. Just get my mobile out of the way. There we go. Okay, so what we talked about today, if I just move on a couple of slides, is we've talked about industry recognition, how important that is for us at MarXtar, having those ticks in the boxes to get on the radar in the first place. We've talked about it being a mature solution. It's got a great out of the box. It can be cloud or on-prem. That's a great differentiator for some customers. You've got these 3 tenants, staging, UAT, and production. So you're getting those, it's free as part of your standard license. Others, you're going to have to pay extra for that or don't get them at all. We've got this powerful out of the box that whether you start with IT, we can layer on the enterprise service management workspaces as well. We've looked at some of the productivity areas that we can do within the system, how easy it is for the analyst to access the data in the way they want to access. We've looked at the omni-channel experience, how we can access, create, update, resolve incidents from different parts of, different technologies within the portfolio. We've talked about it's the designer-centric approach, how we can build new functionality in our staging environment, move it into UAT to be a UAT, do snagging on it, update that UAT environment with a new drop, get that signed off, get that agreed, and only then when it's agreed, move it into production. We've looked at asset management, albeit briefly, to show how that can really give you a powerful insight into what's going on to your estate, whether it's IT asset management or it's facilities asset management, for example.
That was very useful. I'm sure everybody found it interesting.
So sort of touched
let's
on
get started on some of the
spaces,
questions
part
we've
of the
got. So
enterprise
one of the
product
ones
of
that's come
Ivanti,
in,
you've got
showed
access
some of the
to,
asset management pieces, but the question is
SecOps,
asset
you've got
management
access
included
to HR, facilities,
with the ITSM
GRC governance,
solution?
you've got access to project management and portfolio management. You've got access to other lines of business that Ivanti are bringing on stream over the next year or so. So once you're in the enterprise space, you've got access automatically to all those new functions in the business. And finally, Ivanti have got a very good online, strong presence within the online community, whether that's the online Ivanti community where you can go and get best practice, ask questions, get support, whether it's the Advantage Learning platform for training and e-learning, or whether it's the Ivanti marketplace to go and get packages of new functionality that you can overlay onto your environment. Maybe you want to go there and get a copy of the HR package and overlay that HR package into your current environment. All of that's part of the Ivanti marketplace. So overall, we see
leading on
some
from
technical,
that, then,
some
would you be able to explain a little bit more about the
some,
different licensing levels?
things within the Ivanti portfolio that make it a powerful solution for us. So on that point, what I'm going to do is pass back to Mark, and we'll see if there are any questions in the chat. So asset management, it can be part of 2 tiers within the Ivanti space. So you can buy basic ITSM, you can buy ITSM and Asset, or you can buy Enterprise, which is basically everything.
So to summarise that,
So
we
there's
were
sort of
talking,
three
you've got an
licenses here as far
ITSM
as
level that would
Ivanti.
include
It's
the
pretty simple
CMDB.
structure, you know, 1, 2, or 3.
ITAM level
A lot of
above that, or
customers
is the enterprise level
want
that would
Asset
include the
until they
ITSM,
see the
ITAM,
capability in the
and
basic
the other line of
CMDB,
business?
and that
That's
may be sufficient for what you need. So come and talk to us if you have those sort of requirements, because a lot of the
Hopefully that
time,
answers that
what
question.
I showed you right at the start, with pure
question just about, you
configuration
mentioned
management
about
will do
signing into
90%
the system
of what you
earlier
want.
on. Does
If you're
Ivanti support
interested
single
in,
sign-on
procurement side
and
or
multi-factor
deep vendor
authentication?
management, more in-depth stock management, then yes, asset management is the place to be. Sort of, yeah. You did have another copy somewhere, but see if I got a better version. But I can bring. I showed the tiers earlier, if that's what we were talking about. I did have a better slide. So as you can probably see here,
we've had it
ITSM
mentioned in
license,
I think the other presentations
ITAM license. So you can have ITAM,
the comments of
ITSM,
low code and
and
no
ITAM.
code. So what is
Or these
Ivanti's
items here are
solution
part
in
of the
respect to that?
enterprise SKU. So they haven't really updated this diagram. I do have a later diagram somewhere lurking, but which we can send on if there's specific interest. The line of business and any future line of business that come down the pipe as well. Yep, so we support SAML providers, OpenID providers.
Okay.
If you're on-prem, then obviously Windows
also
integrated
mentioned that
security.
Possibly seen on the slide earlier on.
Those are the sort of the providers,
for
so things like Shibboleth or Okta or those sort of technologies. You're really looking to use the one that you're already using in your environment. I mean, when it comes to multi-factor, then generally that tends to be handled before it gets to the Ivanti world. So before we get the token to say, yeah, you're okay to go, that multi-factor has already happened. So that tends to happen outside of the Ivanti scope, to be honest. Unless you're going to start building your own integrations to third parties, then there's no need to be doing. Obviously, if you're going to use the Ivanti API on an inbound side, then you're talking to our API using some code and technology. If you are communicating on the outbound side, it really depends on what you're communicating to. If it's SOAP or REST, then generally we can create a quick action that allows you to connect to those APIs without using code. If it's a more complex integration that needs to do, multi-steps or has to analyze the data, then maybe, yes, you might write some JavaScript in the platform to be able to do that. But generally, unless you're integrating, then it's a codeless application. It's drag and drop workflow design, drag and drop window design, those sort of areas. You waited till I stopped my slide there, didn't you? Yeah, absolutely. It's just far up the slide yet again. There is it. I thought I pressed the button, but maybe I didn't. There we go. So yeah, it's really looking at this. Probably this slide gives us an idea about some of the things we're looking at from a service management perspective. So Neurons platform is a subscription service that Ivanti provide that these other cloud or on-premise items can connect to augment their data. So if we're looking at, for example, asset management, either from a cloud or from an on-prem perspective, then we can import data locally within the ITSM tool. So we can go off to a CCM directly or go off to a CSV or whatever and import that data in. But what Neurons, in this particular case, Discovery gives us, it gives us the ability to go off and discover asset information within the Neurons platform, this bar in the middle.
I'm sure you could go
so
on
we can go off,
for
we can
quite
either
a
put an
while
agent on
one,
through
but I think we'll have to bring that
itself,
question to a
or
close.
we can go off to
We come
other
up to time on
connectors.
there.
So we could have a connection
So
to SCCM,
thanks for the time on
or
that. I
or
appreciate that.
Azure,
I'm sure it was
you know,
really
Snow,
useful
or
for
some other
everybody, especially on
connector
the
that
questions
and
at
what
the
we
end.
can do is
So
we can
just to
take that
remind
asset
everybody
information
that
from all of those
from what you've
sources,
seen there
and we
is just
can
a high-level
normalize it down into
overview
one
from the
set of
solution as
data.
you see with the
And
others.
then we point our
We have another
ITSM or asset
session
management
again
tool
later on this
just to that
afternoon
single
from one of
source
the
of
other
data.
vendors.
So
If
what
you
we're
do
doing
have
here
any
that we can do
questions
that we
for us, you
can't
want to
do
follow up with
typically
us,
with
you've got the email
sequential
address
imports
on the
is to
slide that was there, the phone
combine
numbers,
data from
but
multiple
immediately
sources,
following
a
on from this
federated
session,
sort of
you'll be
information
taken
coming into
to
the
a web
system.
page
So
that will allow you
discovery is
to
important
request
to
a
us
more
from the
detailed
ITSM
demonstration if
and
you
our
want to
ITAM
see
space.
how the Ivanti
The
solution
workspace
specifically
here also
matches
lends
your
itself
requirements.
nicely to analysts
We
because
had a
they
question
can
earlier
go
on
off
about the
and they can
recordings
remote
of
control
these. So
use the
yeah, the
PC.
materials
They can go off and
for the
look at their
recordings, they'll be
running
sent out
services. They can
following
look
on
at
later this week once all of the webinars are done.
how much disk space
And
they're using.
David, I
They
see
can
there about a
perform
copy of the
actions on the
slides. I'll make
system
sure you get
without
something
even
sent
having to
over to you
remote
there as
control
well.
the user
But
system.
thank you everybody for your time.
That's an
Have a great day.
area that the analysts often leverage as part of the Neurons platform. And then we've got healing, which is more of a many-to-many relationship, which is we can automatically run a query on a schedule, go and look across the whole estate of our devices and look for any items that are low on disk space, for example. And we can automatically heal those things within the system. So we can run scripts to automatically, fix those issues before they, as they occur. So these are areas that Neurons platforms brings into play. I could, yeah.